Hey everyone, this is Jeremy Johnson back again at the RBCL podcast, and I'm with my pastor, Jim Savastio. And Jim, we've been talking a lot on loneliness and
Yeah.
isolation. Let's start off by asking the question, how can our church and the families better assist people who are lonely and help them and get them involved?
Yeah, that's a great question, Jeremy. And I appreciate the question. I appreciate even the challenge that came as a result of an email that was sent in that we would deal with this because in trying to think through and ask the honest question, where do we do well and where could we improve as a congregation? And so I want to again begin by reiterating that I do think that the as in all relationships, there's two sides of it. There is so that the lonely person or the person looking to get attached needs to be willing to be attached, and then somebody has to be able to respond. Or generally, even in this case, and I'm going to talk about it from this angle, take the lead in this. And while I would encourage lonely people to be proactive to end their loneliness, just as I would encourage an unhealthy person to be proactive and pursue things that would lead to health. So I would encourage somebody who feels lonely to ask not what I want others to do, but what can I do to change this. And so I'm going to begin by saying, Jeremy, that I think whenever anybody starts going to a church, that there are top tier issues they ought to be looking for. I mean, and among those things are going to be things like its doctrine. Is it an Orthodox church? Am I in general agreement with the church? So I say sometimes you want to be able to sing amen, say amen. You want to be able to look at your leaders and say, I trust you. And you ought to be able to look at the body and say, I will serve with you. Are some things I think you ought to be looking for. So, you ought to find a church that has where you're going to be fed and where you're going to be cared for. And that means where your needs are going to be met. You're going to have oversight of your soul. If need be, you're going to be pursued. There'll be discipline, whatever the case might be. I think those are some vital issues. And we could even ask him, well, so what's a healthy church? What does that look like? And
Right.
what are the marks of it? But having said that, I think there are people who come to a church initially due to things like its doctrine and ministry, but they stay because of the relationships. And what helps them to weather things, if there's a time of difficulty, is that they're not just doctrinally tethered or pulpit tethered, but they are relationally tethered,
Yes.
and that I love these people and they love me and I am a part. And so if you sang a hymn like "Blessed Be the Tie That Binds," it has some resonance, that you feel that there really is a blessed tie between. I respect those people. I love those people. Those people would do, if I needed it, they'd do anything for me. They care about me. They pray for me. Those kinds of things.
Yeah.
So, all right. So here's a couple. I want to just start here, top level, maybe high level, and kind of move down. So the first thing that we should do as a congregation is just when anybody comes and is a part of they visit the church for the first time, we ought to notice them, and we ought to be very welcoming to them. Our church is small enough. We're not a tiny church, but we're a small to medium sizes church. That if somebody's come in here, and I will ask sometimes, just because I'm getting old, I'll say, "Have we met before?" And they will say, and I'll say, and sometimes they'll say no, and I'll say, "Is this your first time?" Sometimes they'll say, "No, I was here, but you weren't here." So I think, okay, I didn't think that I'd met you before, but you look for some opportunity to begin to tether yourself. So we had several people visit this Sunday, and which each of them, I gave them my phone number. There were three that were new in town, two single people, a single man, single woman, and a couple. And they were all new. And I said, hey, look, this is my number. If you want to know how to get around in Louisville, you want to know where the best pizza is. And I said, honestly, if you even want to get some other church recommendations, I'd love for you to be here. But if you, just like, I don't know what to do, I would love to connect you. One of them was a Brazilian family. Now, sadly, our resident Brazilians were gone this past Sunday, but it would have been great to say, hey, we have some Brazilians here.
Yeah.
That's a connection. Somebody says, oh, I'm from this, south of Atlanta. Hey, we got a guy here from south of Atlanta, and go and just introduce them. It makes them feel seen and heard. And again, there is the beginning of this relationship. So one of the young ladies that was here, she was starting her graduate school, and we just met for a little bit, but I texted her this morning, how'd your first couple of days of school go? Just something like that. That is a way of saying, wow, I went to a church, somebody noticed me, I was seen, whatever it is. If you have the opportunity, start introducing them. So now that's me, I'm the pastor, so somebody say, well, that's your job. I would do this if I weren't the pastor.
Right.
I think it's general Christian hospitality to notice people and to try to connect them. So if somebody says, hey, I'm starting at Boyce Bible College, hey, we've got 2 or 3 of our guys, or whatever, we've got a guy here from seminary, or whatever the case might be. You try to draw those kinds of connections.
Yeah, that's good.
When we start the service, we look out and we'll say, we see we have several people visiting with us. We want to welcome you warmly in Christ's name. Again, that's people being seen, being noticed, being recognized. So generally then if somebody starts to come back, and they eventually, normally if somebody visits here for any length of time, invitations are going to come in. Hey, we'd love to have you over. What happens generally, and I think this is probably typical in most churches, you're going to get a lot of those invitations at the front end of your time, and those will probably drop off as you kind of plug into different friend groups or whatnot. But sometimes somebody doesn't, and so this is really, I guess, what we ought to talk about. So what would I say if I were to preach this to the congregation? And I might preach this to the congregation. Maybe I'll have already preached it to the congregation by the time this comes out. We ought to look to minister to those in loneliness. If God sets the solitary in families, then the families need to recognize the solitary ones and bring them in. I mentioned in our previous discussion, Jeremy, the text in Hebrews 10, consider one another. It's a text that means to think about each other. So at a church, and again, this is going to be, if you got 1,000 members at your church, if you got 5,000 members, that's going to be a whole lot harder to do than if you have a membership of between 100 and 150 people or so, which I think is quite doable. Make use of things like your church directory. Pray through the people in your church. And think about, so what are they going through? What are Dave and Lydia going through? What are Jeremy and Anna going through right now? What's Travis and Jenna? What's happening with them right now? Of course, as I say that, I'm aware of different people are experiencing different things in our congregation. Pray through the members of the church, and then ask yourself, who's likely to feel the most isolated? And so for me, that's generally going to be, first of all, our unmarried people. If they're here and if they're unmarried and they're not part of a family coming to the church. So you might have some unmarried people, but they're part of a family of 5 or 6 that are coming. So we have a recent family that's coming here. They've got four kids, and the older girls especially have really kind of integrated in, it looks like, from what I can see, and in and among our young people. But it would be different if they were not in a family versus with a family. They got their mom and dad, got their sisters here, so that in some ways they are connected, they have a support system, they have somebody nearby. But if somebody moves here, and so they've moved here from another state, and they're living in Louisville, and maybe they're not going to school, Christian school, where they've got lots of people around them who are believers, and there's an exciting Christian community on campus, but they're going to be maybe somewhat alone, and coming here on church on the Lord's Day, who am I going to sit with? Where am I going to sit? So one thing we can do, I think we ought to do, families, we ought to do, look around. Is there somebody sitting by themselves? And to say, would you like to come sit with our family? Adopt somebody. We had a dear older lady, I wouldn't have called her old. Maria, I wouldn't have called you old. Maria was a Dominican lady, very affectionate, but there are many people who could testify. I could get emotional talking about this. She went to be with the Lord a few years ago. She would look over and see somebody, and if she was sitting by herself because her husband didn't come to church, she would pat the chair and say, "You're going to come and sit next to me," and she would welcome somebody to do that. We could do a much better job in that. So
Yeah.
you see somebody, maybe they're a college student or a single person, single man, single woman, and say, would you like to sit next to me? So that you recognize them, you see them. Or maybe you say to them, look, we're going to adopt you. You say to somebody, where are you going to be for Thanksgiving? Are you going home for Thanksgiving? I don't really. Well, what are you planning to do? Well, I'm going to probably be home. I'm going to probably, no, you're not. You're going to come be with us. That's recognizing. What are you doing for Christmas? Well, I probably watch It's a Wonderful Life at home. Well, look, no. Or it's their birthday. So we've done this for several people. Some of the young people that have come in, you find out. So in our church directory, it's got birthdays. Notice their birthday. Look it up. Look up every month when you get the newsletter. Look it up. See who's got a birthday, who's got an anniversary. Look to be relational. You see it's their birthday, send them a text, shoot them a note, and maybe even say to them, hey, I'd love, like I did with one of our young guys, to say, hey, I'd love to take you out for your birthday. In fact, you got your birth today? Tomorrow? Coming up. All right, so sorry we'll break here, but David here, our in a couple of days, his birthday's coming up. I think, well, I want to acknowledge that to him, whether I acknowledge it in person like that or send him a text. I send people these funny little videos sometimes on their birthday. It's the thing I've started to do. And there's some that are really cute, little, like there's one, like these epic birthday songs, it's called, and it's got their name in it. That are just visually crazy, and it's a weird thing to get from your 60-something-year-old pastor. That's part of the humor of it. Or if it's their anniversary, I've started sending. There's an old Flintstones episode that I remembered from when I was 3 or 4 years old, about them singing "Happy Anniversary," and I'll send that often to a couple when it's their anniversary. Just something like that to acknowledge. You got an anniversary coming up.
That's right. Yep.
All right. So,
days.
I looked at the newsletter. So
So
look
watch
at the
the
newsletter,
newsletter.
but think to yourself, okay, this person's by themselves, that person's by themselves. We had one of the guys for several years. When it was his birthday, he was here. His family was far away, and I found out first time his birthday's in October. He was a student. Found out it was his birthday, and said, "What do you want to eat? What would be meatloaf? What kind of cake do you want? Kind of a thing. We're gonna have you over." And just to make him feel like, hey, again, you're noticed, you're seen, that kind of a thing. So unmarried people, think of them for gatherings of holidays. Think of them on their birthday. Have them over. They should be some of the easiest people to have over because, well, they're going to be grateful sometimes for a home-cooked meal. But like Jeremy, I heard the other day you had some of the young people over to your home and had food and sang hymns and maybe prayed together, had some things like that. And I heard such a great report on that. So well done. I mean, that's the kind of thing to say, that is what a way to be an encouragement. So think through the unmarried people. Again, are these people new to town? Do they have a relationship network? Do they have family in the area? Sometimes a young couple, again, it can be not just a single person, but they're a young couple. They've just moved here. It's their first holidays away from family and whatnot, and an older established couple. Hey, what are you doing for Thanksgiving? We'd love to have you over. Our church does a pretty good job. I think actually quite a good job on Thanksgiving. And generally speaking, if you're alone on Thanksgiving, it's because you want to be here. Because there are several people that have big David's in-laws and open their home, and several other families open their homes. But those kinds of things to make people welcome. Couples without children. Think about new moms. New moms can feel very lonely because they're not able to be as mobile as they once were. So encourage the women in the church to maybe come on over, bring coffee over. May not be able to go out for coffee like they used to because it can be hard. With my little grandson just started to walk, and now he is just zooming all over the place. So it would be hard for my daughter to hold him with that. Whereas if you had her over to the home, or you were able to go to her home or meet in a situation, again, that would just say, let's do something. Let's include people.
Yeah.
Again, you're thinking through. You're considering one another. How do I stir them up to love and good works? Well, again, I have to know them well enough. We're commanded to do this. We're commanded to know each other and to consider each other, to think deeply about each other, to pray for each other. And if we're going to pray more than God bless Jeremy and Anna, God bless David and Lydia, but think about especially what they're going through. And Lord, if they're lonely, may we and may others, love them well. No one person is going to be able to show this to everybody. You should love everyone. You should be friendly toward everyone. You don't have the capacity to have 200 or 300 people that you're going to have in your home regularly or something like that. It's just not going to be able to work out. But it should be that everybody has somebody that they are connected with or connecting with.
Yeah.
And then I want to think about the elderly and the widows and the widower. And I think we could do a better job as a congregation with this. This is part of what we can improve, and I'm thinking about myself too with this. But when you're getting together, to include people that may have some disabilities, some shut-in things, or they're older people begin to feel like they are useless. They get to a point in life where they feel useless. So I'll give a quick illustration of this. This is a really striking thing to me because I've been a baseball fan.
Right.
And one particular team that I followed all my life, I'm a New Yorker, has been a team that used to have a guy named Yogi Berra on it. Yogi Berra was an all-star catcher, 10-time All-Star, 10-time World Series participant, 3-time MVP. Was one of the great players of all time. He later went on and became famous for doing commercials because he's kind of funny. He had a kind of a funny way of talking about him. But what turned out, I read a book in which he featured in it at one point. And here's Yogi Berra, who would be invited to the Yankees spring training games for years. So he's in his 80s now. And he would sit on the bench and he would feel worthless. Nobody would take advantage of this fountain of knowledge. 3-time MVP, 10-time World Series, 10-time All-Star, one of the greats of all time. And he's sitting there, and none of these young guys would ask him a question. And he felt it.
Wow.
He felt like why am I here? And one of the stories that's told in that was one of the other coaches recognized it, and he came to a struggling player, and he said, "You need to go sit next to Yogi," because this guy was popping up everything, And he said, "Hey, Yogi, what's up?" He said, "Do you see anything?" And he says, "Yeah, you're dropping your head and your shoulder here." "I am." And he got up. Next time he hit a double off the wall because he listened, But here was a man who felt lonely, and again, so we have some men and women at this church who have some people in their 70s and into their 80s who are gold, and who have had long marriages, 50, 60 years of marriage. Who have raised kids, grandkids, great-grandkids, and somebody just starting out in life, get to know somebody like that because they feel sometimes like, I can't do what I used to do. I can't teach like I used to teach. I don't have the energy I used to have. But they could still sit with somebody and pour into some. So to build those intergenerational relationships could be a great means of ending for them a degree of loneliness or feelings of uselessness, and also be a golden opportunity for younger couples to invest and get that kind of knowledge and wisdom.
Yeah.
So those are a few thoughts. Jeremy, I don't know if you have any things that you would think to add to that, or anything there that you'd want to.
I'm just thinking about your sermon that you preached years ago. It was on intergenerational relationships.
Yeah, intentional intergenerational relationships.
And there was a lot of fruit that came from that. Go ahead.
Yeah, some of it hopefully lasting. Some of it maybe was more caught up in the moment, but maybe needs to be taught again or preached again.
Well, interestingly enough, it made a lot of the youth come together, 16 to 24 all coming together. But I still see that today, but yeah, but seeing that also with the older and the younger, and I'm just thinking about the idea that people who might struggle to go to these older folks who are fountains of wisdom and
Yeah.
knowledge, a lot of them being godly people are want that.
Yeah.
They feel like this is what the Lord has them to do. I've
Yeah.
seen this myself as I've gone to people and asked, "Can we just sit and read the Proverbs together, and you just share with me what you know about some of the Proverbs?" And
Amen.
that's benefited me greatly. And they wanted to do that. So
Right.
those kind of
Well,
things.
again, you have to have takes two to tango. Relationships take somebody, one person wanting to connect, and another person willing to
Yeah,
connect.
it's not easy to initiate for some people. Lots of anxiety, right?
That's right.
Yeah.
Yeah. So we need to recognize that. So it's harder for some. Pray, trust the Lord to give you that help, and may the Lord use some of these things to help us bond closer together as a body here.
Yeah. Well, thank you, Jim. I appreciate that very much.
You're welcome.